Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Off the Bench podcast. My name is Robert Sellers. I'm officially back in Tuscaloosa, back in my apartment after a brief hiatus, a brief Thanksgiving break. But I am ready to go and I'm ready to talk about the college football playoffs because it is time right now where the regular season is over. We got conference championship weekend coming up, and all the conversation in the college football world has officially shifted from talking about games, from talking about teams, to pretty much only talking about who people think should be in the playoffs. So I'm going to do three things tonight. It is officially 4:54 Central Time right now. So the playoff rankings come out in about an hour, and I'm going to give my prediction for what I think those rankings are going to be. And this video will probably come out about the same time the rankings come out. So if I'm right, it's going to be really funny. I'm going to give what I think they should be, and I'm going to give what my specific system has them as. So there's three separate things. And then I'm going to talk about some of the things I think could happen in conference championship weekend that could alter some of the rankings, and also just some of my opinions on some things I've heard from around the college football community. First of all, I just want to say I want to give the criteria for my rankings, what I want to do, and how it differs from what the actual rankings should be. Because whether or not I want to be, I am not on the college football playoff committee. So what I think actually doesn't really mean anything. I'm just going to give my opinion. This is just an entirely subjective opinion. But first of all, the first things first, I'm going to unveil what I think the college football playoff rankings are going to be in an hour. I think they're going to look exactly like this pretty much. I think Ohio State will definitely maintain the number one spot, and rightfully so. I think Indiana will be number two. But by the way, that game is going to be fantastic. I cannot wait to talk about that when the Buckeyes take on the Hoosiers. Georgia will be number three. Texas Tech, I think, will be number four. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see if they'll put Tech above Oregon or Oregon above Tech. But I think those teams will be 4 and 5. So those are the four teams that I have buys. First of all, can we get some more color with the buys? Why do we all have to be red with the coloring? I hate that. One of my favorite things about college football is all the colors, and I hate when I see red versus red and all that shenanigans. Whatever. This is what I think the top four are going to be, and then Oregon I have at number five. Texas A&M I don't think should drop too much. I have them at number six. I think Oregon and A&M are really close, but obviously this is what I think will happen. I think that they will put Ole Miss below Texas A&M because of Lane Kiffin leaving. First of all, I think that is the most ridiculous thing ever. I'll talk more about that later in the show. And then I think Notre Dame and Oklahoma won't really move. Neither will Alabama. Of course, the only team that lost in these rankings, or the top 10 rankings pretty much last week, was Texas A&M. So that's why I only dropped them. And then I have North Texas at number 12. It's going to be Tulane. I just had North Texas there because I didn't want to edit it to Tulane because I don't understand why Tulane. Whatever. I really think that North Texas 100% deserves to be over Tulane for sure. I don't really understand why Tulane is in there. I mean, they have one more loss. They both have blowout losses, and I think North Texas is going to smoke Tulane. Of course, without John Summerall, I mean, I think that's not even going to be close. And then I have Virginia at number 11. Of course, Miami is the higher ranked team in the ACC than Virginia is, but Miami's not in the ACC championship. So I think it's ridiculous of the college football playoff rankings graphic to have Miami in there because they're not going to get that spot. It's either going to be Virginia or Duke, and Virginia is the higher ranked team. So I've got them in, or I think this is the committee is going to have them in at number 11. So this is exactly what I think the committee is going to do. I disagree with a couple things about this. First of all, I think that Texas Tech is still too high. I mean, I feel like people have just watched a couple Texas Tech games and they saw that they blew out West Virginia, they blew out BYU, and they did, and that's very impressive. I think Texas Tech is one of the best teams in college football. I think they're great. But eye test is not what I go off of because my eyes are wrong all the time. I had picked Alabama to lose to Missouri, to lose to Auburn. I picked Georgia to lose to Texas. I am wrong like all the time about college football. So I don't factor in my eye test. And the funny thing is, no one, not even the great Nick Saban, has been able to accurately predict college football games at a consistent level. It's never happened. So I don't know why eye test is even a category of what we do in ranking college football teams. I think Texas Tech's too high, like I said. I still think Alabama is going to be too low. I mean, Alabama's resume really speaks for itself. I think that again, North Texas should be in over Tulane. They'll probably have Tulane in, and I do think Notre Dame is a fantastic football team. I really do believe that. I think that they're one of the only teams in the country that can win the national championship. I think Notre Dame is a better football team than Oklahoma, than Texas A&M, than Alabama, than Texas Tech. but I don't think Notre Dame deserves to be number 8 in the playoff rankings right now. In my opinion, their resume is not nearly as good as some of these other teams, and I think that's what we should be valuing. So, with that, I'm going to reveal what I think the college football playoff rankings should be. This is what they look like. This would be, if I was on the committee, this is what I would be pushing for. I think the committee will have it right with Ohio State, Indiana, and Georgia. I think those are the 3 best resumes in the country, and I don't think it's very close. Or it's close, I shouldn't say that, but I think it's pretty obvious that those should be the top 3 teams. And then Oregon, they've gotten big time wins this year. They've won at Iowa, they've won at Penn State, they've won at Washington. And I know a lot of you from the South or fans that are watching that may not be the fondest of the Oregon Ducks are saying, at Washington, at Iowa, at Penn State? Are those really good wins? They're not as good as our wins, are they? Those are tough places to play, man. They really are. If you've been to those venues, which I have not, but if you have been to those venues, you know that it is not easy to go into Iowa and get a win in a night environment when it's raining. Going into Washington and winning, barely any teams ever do that. Going on the road to Penn State at night, everyone knows how tough of an environment that is. So I think Oregon has done a fantastic job this season. They were 11-1. I think they deserve a college football bye right now. If I were to end the season right now, I'd have Oregon with a bye. Again, I think Alabama's resume is very, very impressive. They've had so many big time wins, and I understand they've lost to Oklahoma and to Florida State. But I mean, if I compare Alabama to Ole Miss, I mean, there's a reason that Alabama's in the SEC championship over Ole Miss and Texas A&M, and it's because their wins in the SEC have been more impressive. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. I think that Ole Miss should not be penalized for having Lane Kiffin and their staff leave. I will speak more on that later when I get more specifically into Ole Miss. And I think Texas Tech should still be in the field. I do, because they've been really impressive this year and they've gotten a couple big wins. But Texas Tech lost to Arizona State. Are we all? I feel like everyone's just forgotten about that. Texas Tech went on the road and lost to an Arizona State team that has been very underwhelming this year. I think they're 8-4. And I mean that's a rough loss. I mean, when I compare Texas Tech's resume to Oklahoma, Oklahoma has a win on the road at Alabama. That is one of the most impressive wins that any team has gotten all season. And Tech's best win is at home against BYU. I mean, I don't see why Texas Tech's resume is more impressive than Oklahoma's. I don't get it. Do I think Tech is a better team than Oklahoma? I think it's very close. I think that game would be unbelievable to watch Texas Tech's high-powered offense go up against Oklahoma's fantastic elite defense. I think that'd be a really fun game to watch. But I'm not putting Texas Tech below Oklahoma because I think they're a worse team. I'm putting Texas Tech below Oklahoma because I think they've had a less impressive resume. And that's pretty much entirely why I think they should be below the Sooners. Of course, this is not what's going to happen. ESPN is not going to drop Texas Tech down to number 9. That would never occur. And then my most passionate belief about the college football playoff rankings is I think Vandy should be in the playoff. That is truly what I believe. And I will talk more about that in a second. But this is what I would have. And this would garner some amazing games, by the way. Like I said, Texas Tech and Oklahoma would be awesome. Winner of that game playing Ohio State. That'd be a lot of fun. If Alabama beats North Texas, they'd play Oregon. You get a little Kalen DeBoer versus Dan Lanning action. That would be a lot of fun. Vandy A&M would be great. That's an SEC matchup we haven't seen yet. Winner of that would play Indiana. Finally get to see Indiana versus the SEC. That would be a lot of fun. And then Ole Miss would probably have a rematch with Georgia. And I know a lot of people don't like rematches, but that would be a fun one. It would be more fun, of course, if Lane Kiffin was there, but, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Anyway, this is what I have. And you can pause it, you can look at it, you can critique it, whatever you want. This is my opinion. But all season long, I haven't been going off my opinion because I think opinions always inherit bias, whether it's SEC bias, Big Ten bias towards a specific team or specific players. Everyone that is a college football fan has grown up a college football fan of a specific team in a specific conference with specific players and therefore has bias. So I have a model, I have a system for resume rankings, and that is what I think the rankings, or that's what my system thinks the rankings should be. I think the system is wrong right now, but that's just what it thinks. This is what the system would have it. Again, this is just I created a system, and it churned out the rankings. This is not my opinion. This is my system's opinion. So don't saying these rankings are ridiculous because I think they're ridiculous. This is just my system. My system thinks that the Big Ten has the three best resumes in the country with Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. I can't really argue there. Alabama's resume, like I said, is fantastic. It really is. And they won head to head against Georgia. So I mean, it's got them over Georgia. And then A&M at number 6, Oklahoma at 7. Ole Miss is all the way down at 8. Ole Miss did not have a very strong SEC schedule. I mean, they got good wins, but not a lot of them. So they're down there at number 8. And then notice Texas Tech's not even in the rankings. So that just goes to tell you Texas Tech's resume is not very impressive. They don't have a lot of wins over like elite high-end talent teams. They got that one win at Utah. That was a big one. But other than that, I mean, I really don't see them having a lot of other big wins. And then it's also got Virginia and North Texas. So that much doesn't change. But that's not. This is the vague portion of this episode. It is just the rankings that I think the committee's going to have, that I would have, and that my system would have. But I want to talk more specifically about specific teams. First of all, starting off with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Vandy is 10-2 in the SEC. If you had told me Vanderbilt was 10-2 in the SEC at the beginning of the season, I would have said no doubt they're in the playoff. I mean, any 10-2 SEC team would, yes, no doubt be in the playoff if you told me that they would be 10-2 in the offseason. And probably, I mean, as much as I would hate that this is true, most likely Vanderbilt is not going to make the playoffs. And the only reason that I can possibly think of for that to be true is because they're Vanderbilt. I mean, people still don't trust that Vanderbilt is good. To me, that's the only excuse why Vanderbilt is not in the playoff. And I think that is so ridiculous. I mean, if Texas had this resume, if Texas was 10-2 with these wins and these losses, Texas Tech would be in the playoffs in a heartbeat. Or not Texas Tech, Texas. So would LSU. So would Alabama. So would Georgia or Ohio State or Michigan. But since it's Vanderbilt, since the logo is a black and gold V and on an orange hook 'em horns, the Vanderbilt Commodores are going to be left out of the playoff. And I think it is so ridiculous. I mean, just look at who they've beaten. They have so many good wins. They won at Tennessee. They beat LSU and they were ranked number 10. LSU still had Brian Kelly. Their playoff chances were still alive. LSU is a really talented team that Vandy was able to beat. They beat Missouri in College Game Day. They went on the road to number 11 South Carolina at the time and crushed them. And I know you might be saying it's South Carolina. They've had a terrible season. That's not a good win. You know who struggled to beat South Carolina on the road? Alabama. They dang near lost to South Carolina. A&M was down at home against South Carolina, 27 points at halftime. Vandy just thwomped them 31-7. They smoked Virginia Tech on the road. It's one of the reasons they fired their coach. They destroyed Kentucky, and they beat Tennessee on the road by 21 points and then somehow dropped in the AP poll. I don't understand that at all. I think that's ridiculous. But I'm just saying, I think Vandy should be in the playoff. I mean, I'm going to compare right now Vanderbilt's wins to Notre Dame's wins. And yes, I believe Notre Dame is a better team than Vanderbilt. That is not what I'm saying. I think CJ Carr is a developing quarterback that has so much talent, and if he puts it all together with more experience, he can be elite. I think that Jeremiah Love's one of the best running backs we've seen in college football the past 10 years. That defensive line is great. They're so gap sound because Marcus Freeman was a linebacker. Notre Dame is such a good football team. But I'm just comparing resumes because we have not seen Vanderbilt play Notre Dame. How does anyone know that Notre Dame would beat Vanderbilt? You don't know. That's why we play football games. But here's who Vanderbilt has beaten compared to who Notre Dame has beaten, and the little numbers on the right are those teams' ranks in the FPI by Bill Connolly. It's basically a power ratings metric system done by numbers to determine which teams are the best in college football. This has nothing to do with resume. It's everything to do with like the strength of the team. And if you look at them, I mean, Vanderbilt's wins are much better than Notre Dame's wins. I mean, what has Notre Dame done that Vanderbilt hasn't done? They beat USC. Are we really going to put Notre Dame in the playoff just because they beat USC? No. The reason that we're putting Notre Dame in the playoff is because they're Notre Dame. That is literally entirely if you switch these two logos, if I put Notre Dame's logo on Vanderbilt's resume and I put Vanderbilt's logo on Notre Dame's resume, then Notre Dame would be in the playoff, no doubt. And that's literally the only reason, is because people think that they're better. And yes, I think that they're better too, but I'm just not factoring that into my equation because I could be wrong. But what I'm not wrong about is that Vanderbilt's resume, who they've beaten, is better than Notre Dame's resume and who they've beaten. And if you say, what about the losses, Robert? What about the losses? Vanderbilt has lost at Alabama and at Texas. I mean, that's just as tough. That's more tough than at Miami and versus Texas A&M. And I feel like we're discrediting wins at this point. Like I've heard people say, "Yeah, man, I see what you're saying about Vanderbilt, but I mean Notre Dame, they almost beat Miami and they almost beat Texas A&M." Key word there is almost. I mean, teams are trying to win football games. Have we forgotten about that? You don't get credit for almost winning. You don't get half a loss. It's not Notre Dame's not 10 wins, 0 actual losses, and 2 almost losses. No, they're 10-2. There's an L next to the loss against A&M and Miami, just the same as there's an L next to Vanderbilt's losses against Texas and Alabama. I feel like that we're giving credit out for barely losing to teams. Why is that? That's never been a thing in college football. I think that's ridiculous. Um, so I think that this is Vandy's best chance to make the playoffs maybe ever. This is the best regular season that Vanderbilt has ever had. They've never won 10 games in a regular season. Or at least that's what I heard. That's what I researched and I figured that out. And then ESPN said this is their first 10-win season since 1929. So either or, I mean, either they haven't won 10 wins in 94 years or they've never gotten 10 wins. And I mean, this is their best regular season that any of us have ever been alive for. And they've beaten really good teams. And Notre Dame lost against their 2 best opponents. I guess so did Vandy. But the other teams they've beaten, in my opinion, are not as good as the teams Vandy's beaten. So I think it's ridiculous. I think that Vanderbilt's going to get left out of the playoff. I don't think it makes any sense. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it shouldn't happen, but it's going to, which is just a real shame. So I wanted to give credit to the Vanderbilt Commodores for having an amazing season. And by the way, they just put up 582 total yards against Tennessee on the road. They ran the ball for like 314 yards against Tennessee. I mean, that is crazy. They put up 45 points in 3 straight games. They put up over 500 yards of total offense against SEC defenses 3 weeks in a row. And we're out here saying that Vanderbilt's not whatever. I think it's ridiculous. I think this is the biggest travesty this year. It's not that Miami's not going to make it over Notre Dame. It's not that Texas isn't going to make it. It's that Vanderbilt is going to be left out of the playoffs with this resume, with what they've done this year. I think it's kind of embarrassing. But whatever. I'm not on the committee. I don't have any control over it. Next team I wanted to talk about is Ole Miss, because I've heard a lot of people say, "Yeah, man, Ole Miss, they've had a great season." Actually, I haven't heard anybody say that. Everyone's talking about Lane Kiffin right now. It's kind of ridiculous, but Ole Miss has had a great season. They're 11-1 in the SEC, and a lot of people are saying that potentially Ole Miss could fall in the rankings, or they could fall out of the playoff, or they should be punished because Lane Kiffin isn't there, and Lane Kiffin took a lot of his staff with him. And let me just say, in my opinion, without Lane Kiffin, without his offensive staff, Ole Miss is not as good of a football team. I think that's pretty obvious. I think most college football fans could probably realize that that's true. But in my opinion, that doesn't mean they should drop in the rankings. I mean, we have no earthly idea what Ole Miss looks like without Lane Kiffin, because we've never seen this Ole Miss team play a football game without Lane Kiffin as their head coach. We've never seen it. So how on earth are we going to drop Ole Miss out of the playoffs because we think in our minds that they're going to not be as good of a team as another team because they're without certain staff members and their head coach? We have no idea what this team could be. It could be better than it was with Lane Kiffin. Do I think that's true? No. But it could be. I mean, we never know. Do we remember back in 2014 when Ohio State's 2 best quarterbacks were injured and they had to rely on Cardale Jones, and he went out and just skull-drugged Wisconsin and then beat number 1 Alabama in the Sugar Bowl? Do we remember that? Did anyone think that was going to happen? No. But it's college football. Anything can happen. That's what makes this sport so brilliant. So, to me, it has never been any committee member has never said that the criteria for being in the playoffs is having your head coach when he was there for the first 12 games of the season. That doesn't make any sense. That's never made any sense. That's like when the playoff commissioner went out there and said, "Well, Alabama, they played good teams, but they don't have a run game, so we're going to penalize them for that." When has a run game ever been part of the criteria? When has having your head coach ever been part of the criteria? I mean, we have no idea what this Ole Miss team could be. How could we possibly punish them for something that we don't know is going to happen? I think it's ridiculous that this team does not deserve that. This team deserves to be ranked where they were ranked going into this weekend, and they should not be punished. I mean, I've had A&M friends that have said, yeah, I think Lane Kiffin's departure, I think A&M's going to be over Ole Miss because Lane Kiffin's gone. Do I think that they're right? Probably. Ole Miss is probably going to be under A&M because Lane Kiffin is gone. But Ole Miss has beaten better teams than A&M has beaten. So I think it's ridiculous. I really don't think Ole Miss should be punished for this. This reeks of Florida State dropping because Jordan Travis isn't there. I mean, I kind of disagreed with that. So I don't know. I think that Ole Miss might get punished for this. I think if they do, it will also be a travesty, and it'll be ridiculous. I mean, this team has gone 11-1 in the SEC. How are we punishing them for whatever? I've stated my case. I think that would be ridiculous. Next team I want to talk about is Alabama. A lot of people have said, and here's the scenario for the Crimson Tide. If Alabama wins against Georgia in the SEC championship game, most likely they will either have a bye or a home playoff game, depending on the seeding. I don't know if the committee will put them above Oregon. I don't know if the committee will put them above Texas Tech or above the loser of the Big Ten championship game. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But the more important scenario for the Crimson Tide is if they lose this game. If they lose to the Georgia Bulldogs, is there a chance that Alabama drops out of the playoff rankings? Well, let me go back to the playoff rankings slide that I have. So this is what I think the committee will have the rankings at tonight. Alabama at number 10, Georgia at number 3. If Alabama loses to Georgia, will they drop out? In my opinion, they should not, because the Crimson Tide have earned the spot in the SEC championship game. And if they lose that game, then no, they shouldn't be punished for dropping all the way out. If Texas Tech wins, if BYU wins, then it's a completely different conversation. Because if BYU wins, it comes down to who do we think should be in the playoffs between Texas Tech, Alabama, and in my opinion, Notre Dame. And I think let's just say theoretically that Alabama gets left out of the playoffs. Just prepare for hell to be brought upon the College Football Playoff Committee by not only Alabama fans, not only Greg Sankey, but the entirety of the SEC will want to just annihilate anyone that says Alabama shouldn't be in the playoffs because they are the number one team standings wise in the SEC. And if you're not going to include them in the playoffs, whether or not they shouldn't or should be in, I think that you will just absolutely feel the wrath of the SEC. They are going to be so mad if that happens. Um, but let's assume that Alabama loses and Texas Tech wins. If that is the case, I still think that Alabama has a better resume than Notre Dame. I still think Alabama should be above Notre Dame. But then you're comparing Alabama to a two-loss Vanderbilt, who Alabama beat. You're comparing them to a two-loss Miami. You're comparing them to a two-loss Utah, a two-loss BYU, and a three-loss Texas. In my opinion, Alabama should still be in over all of those teams that I just mentioned if they lose this game because they are in over them right now. If Alabama is ranked over, let's just say Miami, for example, in an hour when the rankings come out and Alabama loses to Georgia, I don't think they should drop out any further past where they are ranked. Now, if, for instance, for some random reason, Texas is ranked over Alabama and Alabama loses to Georgia, then yeah, I think Alabama shouldn't be ranked over Texas after losing a game. But I just don't think Texas is going to be ranked over Alabama. But it is my opinion that a team shouldn't be penalized for losing a conference championship, which is a reward. And we saw this last year with SMU. I mean, SMU lost in their conference championship against Clemson and didn't drop out of the ranking. And I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought SMU deserved to be in the playoffs over a team like Alabama or South Carolina or Ole Miss. Because I don't think you should punish a team for losing in their conference championship weekend. And the playoff committee last year also didn't think that. So if it's consistent with its logic, then Alabama wouldn't drop out of the playoffs. The last team I wanted to talk about is Texas. Let me see if I can pull up their graphic real quick. Here, I'll just pull up this graphic. Texas. So Texas, a lot of Texas fans really believe that Texas should be in the playoff. Steve Sarkisian obviously really believes that Texas should be in the playoffs. I think Texas is a great football team. I do. I think Arch Manning is the most talented quarterback in college football right now. I think he's phenomenal. I think that he really has a very real future in the NFL to be a really good football player. Whether he enters the draft this year or stays in college for another season, whatever it is, he's a great player. This defense is phenomenal. Colin Simmons is one of the best defensive players in the country. When healthy, they have Simmons, Anthony Hill, and Michael Taft, who are three of the best players at their respective positions. Texas is an awesome football team. They're fun to watch. They're elite talented, and they've got a good, I'll say great coaching staff. I don't think it's elite, but they've got a great coaching staff. So this Texas team is very, very good. I think that they are one of the 12 best teams in college football. But what I think, or what any of the committee thinks a team is, if a team is one of the 12 best, that shouldn't be part of the criteria. To me, it's all about your resume. And I think that if you were to ask me, does Texas deserve to be in the playoffs? I would say yes, they do. But that's not the question. That's not what we should be asking. We can compare Texas to a vacuum all that we want. We can say Texas, yeah, they've beaten A&M and they've beaten Vandy and they've beaten Oklahoma and they have really good losses. They should be in the playoff. To me, that's not what the argument should be. It's should Texas be in the playoff over X, Y, and Z. You can't just say Texas should be in the playoff. You have to say they should be in the playoffs over Notre Dame or over Miami or over Vanderbilt or whomever you think they should be ranked over. And I think this is just a really unfortunate year for Texas to go 9-3 with those wins, because I don't think that any of those other 10-2 teams deserve to be dropped below Texas. Now, here's what you might say, and here's what a lot of Texas fans are saying right now, and a lot of college football fans in general. They're saying, well, Texas scheduled the game against Ohio State. They went on the road early in the year against like the best team in college football, and they lost. And now that they're 9-3, they're getting punished for that. But if they had scheduled Ohio State, if they had played, Rice, for instance, no hit on Rice, but they would have beaten Rice, they would be 10-2 and they'd easily be in the playoff. Well, in my opinion, you can't just assume that a 10-2 Texas would be in the playoffs. I mean, are we just going to assume that 10-2 Texas would be over Notre Dame, would be over Miami, would be over BYU? I don't think so, because a 10-2 Texas, if they had played Rice instead of Ohio State, they wouldn't like. I don't know if they would have the resume that'd be strong enough for them to be in the playoffs. And that's the point of playing that tough game at Ohio State. The point of playing that is that you have the opportunity to win it. Because if you scheduled Rice and won, it wouldn't be guaranteed that you would be in the playoff. But if you won that game at Ohio State and went 10-2, then you would 100% be in the playoff. To me, it's about the opportunity cost of that game. If you just look at Ohio State. They won the game against Texas. They scheduled a really tough game and won it. And because of that, they've been the number one team all season long. So if Texas had just won the game against Ohio State, I know that's like an impossible task to ask, but if they had won that game, then they would be in the playoff for sure. Just like if they had beaten Florida or if they had beaten Georgia, they would be in the playoff. But that's not the topic of conversation, apparently. So, in my opinion, they should play those games against Ohio State. And I don't think they're getting punished for that, because if they had played Rice or Louisiana Monroe or Louisiana Lafayette or whomever and won, I don't think they'd be in the playoff. But if they had beaten another Power 5 team on the road like they scheduled, then they would be. I mean, just like Notre Dame. I mean, if Notre Dame hadn't scheduled A&M and Miami and had played cupcake teams, then yeah, I guess they may be in the playoff. But if they had won against A&M or Miami, they would easily be in right now. So, in my opinion, you schedule tough teams so you can get good wins. And Texas just lost the game. So, I think, honestly, if you're Steve Sarkisian, and of course he said all that stuff about Texas because he has to. It's what he's supposed to say. But if I'm a coach or if I'm a Texas fan or a Texas booster or whomever, and I'm complaining about the system being rigged and I'm complaining about not playing Ohio State and all that shenanigans, I think you should be more focused on the fact that you had a really talented team and a whole offseason to prepare for a big-time game on the road at number 3 Ohio State. And you went into that game and lost. if you had prepared better, if you had recruited better, if you had game planned better, and you went in that game and won, then this wouldn't even be a conversation. So yes, I think that the point of playing games is to try and win the game. I don't think we should give out participation trophies for losing against good teams. I just think that that whole logic is flawed. Um, but with that being said, I do think Texas is a good team. I think that in a normal year, that is, I think if this was last year, maybe Texas has an argument to be in the playoffs. But this year, there's just too many teams with better resumes that have won games more consistently than Texas has. So that's my opinion. This is what I think the bracket should be. It's obviously not going to be this. It's going to look way more like this. It could look exactly like this potentially, but there's probably going to be a couple things that I'm wrong about. But um, I think that's going to do it for my podcast tonight. Thanks so much for watching. And if there's something you take away from this podcast, it is not that I think Vandy should be in the playoffs, or Texas shouldn't be, or Texas Tech shouldn't be at number 4. Um, it is that Jesus Christ is real and he loves you, and true fulfillment on this planet is always found through God, through his grace, through living a life filled with faith, hope, and love. And everything else on this world is just fleeting. And the only thing that is forever, that is eternal, that will fulfill you truly, is the love of God. And that is the message. That is the good news of the world. So I just wanted to take a second to share that. And with that, thanks so much for watching. God bless. Have a great Tuesday night and a great Wednesday and a great rest of your week and a good holiday season. Happy December. It's December already, which is nuts. But yeah, thanks for watching, folks. God bless. And I'll see y'all later. Peace out.